My name is Margaret Wilson, and I am 67 years old. I thought distributing my assets while still alive would bring my children happiness and prevent future disputes. How wrong I was. After giving Patricia, my oldest daughter, our family home, she uttered words that shattered my heart. "The garage is the only place left for you, Mom." I found myself sleeping in a cold, damp garage until I finally opened the letter my late husband Frank left before his death. When Patricia read it, she begged to have everything back. If you believe greed never brings happiness, please share this story. Before I dive into my experience, where are you watching from today? Give this video a like and subscribe if you believe family should be about love, not possessions. Your support helps remind others that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in how we treat each other. 3 years ago, my world changed forever when Frank, my husband of 45 years, passed away from heart disease. His death left an emptiness in our 2-story colonial home that echoed through every room. The house that once buzzed with laughter and conversation became painfully quiet. Each morning I would wake up reaching for him, only to find his side of the bed cold and untouched. Frank and I built our lives from nothing. We worked multiple jobs in our early years to save for a down payment on this house in a peaceful neighborhood with tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors. The mortgage payments were tough sometimes, but we never missed one. Frank would often say, "This house is our legacy, Margaret. Something solid for the kids when we're gone." Our home wasn't just 4 walls and a roof, it was where we raised our children, celebrated Christmas mornings, hosted graduation parties, and welcomed grandchildren. Every corner held memories. The height marks on the kitchen doorframe showing how Patricia and Richard grew, the dent in the living room wall from when Richard crashed his new bike indoors despite our warnings, the garden Frank and I planted together where I still grew tomatoes using his handwritten instructions. Patricia was always Frank's favorite, though he tried not to show it. Our firstborn, she had his ambition and drive. She was the president of her class, captain of the debate team, and graduated with honors before getting her MBA. Frank beamed with pride at her achievements, sometimes overlooking how demanding and entitled she could be. "She just knows what she wants," he would say when I expressed concern about her attitude. Richard was different, quieter, more thoughtful, less demanding. He helped with house repairs alongside his father, started a small landscaping business after college instead of pursuing corporate success like his sister. Frank respected Richard's choices but never quite understood his contentment with a simpler life. We sacrificed much for our children. We worked overtime, skipped vacations, and lived frugally to ensure they could attend good colleges without debt. Our reward was seeing them succeed, even if Patricia's version of success meant a bigger house and luxury cars, while Richard found fulfillment in his modest business and happy family. Our family dinners were sacred every Sunday without fail. Patricia would sometimes arrive late, distracted by work calls, while Richard and his wife Laura always brought homemade dessert and made sure their son Brandon spent quality time with us. Those dinners changed after Frank died. Patricia's visits became less frequent, always with an excuse about work deadlines or her daughter's activities. My decision to distribute our assets came after watching my dear friend Evelyn's family fall apart. At her husband's funeral, her 3 children argued over who would get the lake house, their voices rising during the reception while Evelyn sat alone, forgotten in her grief. "I never thought they would behave like this," she told me later, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. All those years of love, and it comes down to who gets what. I lay awake many nights after that, staring at the ceiling, thinking about my own children. Would they fight after I was gone? Would the memory of their parents be overshadowed by disputes over furniture and family heirlooms? The thought was unbearable. My health was still good. I walked 3 miles daily and volunteered at the community garden, but at 67, I knew nothing was guaranteed. The house felt too big for me alone. The stairs became more challenging each year. The maintenance overwhelmed me sometimes, especially tasks Frank used to handle. Barbara, my younger sister, visited often after Frank died. "You need to think about downsizing," she suggested one afternoon as we sorted through Frank's clothes for donation. "This place is too much for one person." She was right, but the thought of leaving our home brought me to tears. Every inch contained pieces of our life together. The final push came when I overheard Patricia talking to Thomas, her husband, during a visit. They were in the kitchen while I was in the hallway. "Mom can't manage this place alone," she said. We should talk to her about selling it before it loses value. This neighborhood would be perfect for us. The girls could have their own rooms, and the schools are excellent. Her words weren't wrong, but her tone calculating, planning around my eventual decline chilled me. That night I made my decision. I would distribute our assets while still alive. I would see my children benefit from Frank's and my lifetime of work. I would avoid the fate that befell Evelyn's family. I never imagined my decision would lead me to sleep in our garage, treated like an unwelcome guest in the home I had lovingly maintained for 4 decades. I never thought my own daughter would see me as an inconvenience to be tucked away out of sight. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let me tell you about how I went about dividing everything we had built. After weeks of consideration, I contacted Charles Reynolds, our family attorney who had handled Frank's will and our estate planning for 20 years. His office still had the same leather chairs and family photos on the desk, but everything felt different without Frank beside me. "Margaret, are you absolutely certain about this?" Charles asked after I explained my plan. His gray eyebrows furrowed with concern as he leaned forward. "Once you transfer assets, especially real estate, it's difficult to reverse. I want to see my children enjoy their inheritance while I'm alive," I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. "Frank worked so hard for everything we have. What good is it sitting untouched when the kids could use it now?" Charles nodded reluctantly and outlined the options. I could transfer the house deed to Patricia, divide our savings and investments between both children, and distribute family heirlooms and antiques according to my wishes. He advised keeping enough money for my living expenses, healthcare costs, and emergencies. "We should include a life estate provision for the house," he suggested. "This would guarantee your right to live there regardless of ownership." I hesitated, then shook my head. I trust my daughter. Patricia has always said I'm welcome to live with her family if needed. The house is too big for me anyway. Charles looked unconvinced but proceeded to draft the documents. I would later replay this conversation in my mind during those cold nights in the garage, wishing I had heeded his concern. I called a family meeting the following Sunday. We gathered in the dining room where we'd celebrated countless birthdays and holidays. Patricia arrived precisely on time, immaculately dressed despite it being the weekend. Richard and Laura came a few minutes early to help me prepare coffee and pastries. "I've made an important decision," I announced once everyone was seated. "I'm going to distribute our family assets now, rather than having you wait until after I'm gone." Patricia's eyes widened with interest. Richard looked surprised, then concerned. "Mom, there's no rush," he said. "We're all doing fine. I want to see you enjoy what your father and I worked for," I explained. "Patricia, since you've always loved this house and your family needs more space, I'm transferring it to you." Patricia gasped, her hand covering her mouth. "Mom, really? The house? Are you sure?" "Yes, with one condition, that I can stay here with you in my room. I'll help with the grandkids and household expenses." I turned to Richard. "For you, there's the investment portfolio and savings. I know you've wanted to expand your landscaping business." Richard started to protest, but Laura squeezed his hand. "That's incredibly generous, Margaret," she said softly. We spent the afternoon discussing details. Patricia immediately began planning renovations: new kitchen cabinets, updated bathrooms, perhaps converting the basement into a home theater. Richard seemed uncomfortable with the arrangement but thanked me sincerely. "What about you, Mom?" he asked. "Where will you live?" "With Patricia's family," I replied, smiling at my daughter. "It makes sense. The house is familiar, and I can help with Jennifer and Ashley after school." Patricia nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, Mom. We'd love having you. The girls adore you, and it'll be a huge help with our schedules." The paperwork took several weeks. Charles insisted on clear documentation for everything, especially regarding my continued residence in the house. Each time he suggested more formal protections for me, I declined. These were my children, after all. The thought that they might mistreat me seemed absurd. When the day came to sign the final documents, I felt a strange mixture of relief and grief. As I watched Patricia's face light up when Charles handed her the house deed, I knew I'd made the right decision. Richard's gratitude for the financial assets that would secure his business and family's future confirmed it further. Yet there was an undeniable sense of loss, not just of possessions, but of the life Frank and I had built. As I signed my name on the documents, I remembered his large hand covering mine when we signed the original mortgage 40 years earlier, his voice whispering, "This is just the beginning, Maggie." Barbara called that evening after hearing about my decision. "Margaret, have you lost your mind?" Her voice crackled through the phone. "You've given away everything. What if things don't work out with Patricia?" "She's my daughter," I replied defensively. "She and Thomas have a beautiful family. They want me there." "People change when property and money are involved," Barbara warned. "Promise me you've protected yourself legally." I assured her everything would be fine, but her words planted a seed of doubt I couldn't quite shake. The transition happened gradually. Patricia suggested I move in immediately while they planned renovations. I packed my personal belongings, keeping only what would fit comfortably in my bedroom. Clothes, books, photo albums, and a few treasured mementos. Among them was an envelope Frank had given to Charles to pass to me after the funeral, a final letter I hadn't found the courage to open yet. The day I officially moved in, Patricia welcomed me with a homemade dinner and flowers on my nightstand. Thomas helped carry my boxes, and the girls made a colorful welcome grandma sign for my door. Everything seemed perfect. I had my family close, my beloved home would continue providing shelter to a new generation, and I had unburdened my children from future disputes. How quickly that perfection would crumble. The first few weeks living with Patricia, Thomas, and my granddaughter seemed like a dream. I woke each morning to the comforting sounds of a bustling household so different from the lonely silence that had enveloped me since Frank's passing. I prepared breakfast for everyone, packed lunches for Jennifer and Ashley, and walked them to the bus stop. Patricia thanked me profusely for keeping the household running smoothly, while she focused on her executive position at the marketing firm. Thomas was polite but distant, often working late and spending weekends golfing with clients. Still, our family dinners were lively affairs, with the girls chattering about school and friends. I felt useful and connected, exactly what I had hoped for when making my decision. "Grandma makes the best cookies in the universe," 9-year-old Jennifer announced one evening, her mouth full of chocolate chip cookie. "Way better than the store ones Mom buys." Patricia's smile tightened slightly. "Well, Grandma has more time for baking than I do with my work schedule." It was a small comment, barely noticeable, but it marked the beginning of a shift. The following week, Patricia mentioned that my morning routine of making breakfast was a bit too noisy and disturbed their sleep. "Maybe just cereal for the girls would be simpler," she suggested. "And Thomas prefers his special protein shake anyway." By the end of the first month, more suggestions appeared. My cooking used too many spices. The television volume during my evening shows was too loud. The lavender hand soap I purchased for the kitchen caused Patricia's allergies to flare. My gardening tools cluttered the garage where Thomas needed space for his golf equipment. "Mom, we love having you here." Patricia would always begin these conversations. "But we need to make some adjustments so everyone's comfortable." I retreated more each day, trying to minimize my presence. I ate breakfast after everyone left, watched television with headphones, and limited my gardening to early mornings when Thomas's car wasn't in the garage. My bedroom became my sanctuary, though even that space was soon compromised. "Mom, I've been thinking," Patricia said one Saturday morning, standing in my doorway. "This room has the best natural light in the house. I've always wanted to create a yoga and meditation space. Would you mind if we divided it? You don't need all this square footage." Before I could respond, she continued enthusiastically about how contractors could build a partial wall, leaving me plenty of space, while creating her wellness retreat. By the following week, my bedroom had shrunk by half, with Patricia's yoga mats, diffuser, and Buddha statue occupying the sunny portion near the windows. My relationship with my granddaughters also changed. Patricia began scheduling endless activities for them: piano lessons, soccer practice, tutoring, playdates that left little time for our baking sessions or board games. When I did spend time with them, Patricia would later correct my interactions. "Mom, please don't give them treats right before dinner," she'd say. Or, "We're trying to limit their screen time, so no more movie afternoons." And most painfully, "You're spoiling them too much. They need to learn discipline." The family dinners grew less frequent as Patricia and Thomas often ate separately after the girls' bedtime. I found myself eating alone in my increasingly smaller bedroom, watching the family I'd given everything to live their lives as if I were merely a houseguest who had overstayed her welcome. I called Richard more frequently, though I never revealed the full extent of my unhappiness. His landscaping business was thriving with the investment funds, and Laura was pregnant with their second child. Their joy was what I had wanted when distributing our assets, and I couldn't bear to dampen it with my complaints. 6 months into this new arrangement, I overheard Patricia and Thomas arguing late one night. "Your mother is always there," Thomas hissed. "I can't relax in my own home. The living room smells like her perfume. The kitchen is organized her way. This isn't what we agreed to. What do you expect me to do?" Patricia replied. "Kick her out? After she gave us the house. We need our space. The girls need their space. Find another solution." The next morning, Patricia approached me with a sympathetic expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Mom, Thomas and I have been talking. We're planning to convert your room into a relaxation space where the whole family can unwind. The contractors are coming next week." My heart pounded. "But where will I sleep?" Patricia wouldn't meet my eyes. "The garage is the only place left for you, Mom. We can make it comfortable with a space heater. It's just temporary until we figure out something else." That afternoon, I returned from grocery shopping to find my belongings had been moved. My clothes hung on a portable rack. My bed was now a narrow cot against the wall. A small nightstand held my alarm clock and reading glasses. My books and photo albums were stacked in plastic containers. The garage was cold, windowless, with concrete floors and the lingering smell of motor oil. I called Richard immediately, but Laura answered. "Richard's on a business trip to Phoenix," she explained. "He won't be back for 2 weeks. Is everything okay?" I couldn't burden her with this, especially in her condition. "Just wanted to chat," I said, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. "Give him my love when you speak to him. We'd invite you to stay with us," Laura added. "But with the baby coming and the renovations, we just don't have the space right now." That night, I sat on the edge of the cot, surrounded by garden tools, holiday decorations, and sporting equipment. The house I had lovingly maintained for decades, the home where I had raised my children and cared for my dying husband, was no longer mine to inhabit properly. I was relegated to the margins, an inconvenience to be stored away like seasonal items no longer in use. I wrapped myself in extra blankets against the autumn chill and wept silently, wondering how I could have been so wrong about my own daughter. Life in the garage quickly became a test of endurance. October brought chilly nights that the small space heater couldn't adequately combat. Condensation formed on the concrete walls, leaving everything with a perpetual dampness. My arthritis flared in the cold, making my morning movements stiff and painful. The practical challenges were endless. The garage had no bathroom facilities, forcing me to time my needs around the family's schedule. I would wait until everyone was asleep before tiptoeing into the house to use the downstairs bathroom, trying not to wake anyone. Some nights, when Thomas stayed up late watching sports, I would simply hold it rather than face his irritated glance. The lack of running water meant no morning washing up unless I ventured into the house. Patricia made it clear that I should use the mudroom entrance and the half bathroom near the kitchen, not the main bathrooms the family used. I kept a basin for minimal washing and a bottle of water for brushing my teeth. Meals became unpredictable. Initially, Patricia would call me in for dinner, but these invitations grew sporadic. "We already ate," she would say when I finally gathered the courage to ask. "There are leftovers in the fridge you can heat up." I began keeping granola bars and fruit in the garage to avoid hunger pangs on the nights I was forgotten. Sleep was difficult on the narrow cot with its thin mattress. The garage door motor would activate whenever Patricia or Thomas came home late, startling me awake. The occasional scurrying sounds of mice in the corners kept me on edge. I strung up sheets to create some semblance of privacy, a pitiful partition between my sleeping area and Thomas's woodworking equipment. Despite these hardships, I tried to create a home in this unwelcoming space. I arranged my few possessions carefully: my wedding photo on the nightstand, Frank's sweater folded at the foot of the cot, a small vase with whatever flowers I could find in the garden. I established routines. reading under the single bulb hanging from the ceiling, writing in my journal, and doing gentle stretches to ease my aching joints. My health began to deteriorate. The damp environment triggered a persistent cough that kept me awake at night. My skin grew dry and itchy. When I mentioned seeing a doctor, Patricia seemed annoyed. Is it really necessary? Our insurance deductible is so high. The most painful aspect was my diminishing relationship with my granddaughters. Patricia created rules that kept them away from me. The garage isn't safe for the girls, she declared. Too many tools and chemicals. When Jennifer asked why Grandma lived in the garage, I overheard Patricia respond, Grandma prefers her privacy. One rainy night in November, water began seeping through the roof, dripping steadily onto my bed. I placed buckets to catch the worst leaks and moved my cot to a drier corner. The next morning, I showed Patricia the puddles and damaged ceiling. It's just a little water, she said dismissively. We'll have someone look at it eventually. The kitchen renovation is our priority right now. Harold and Dorothy Wilson, our neighbors for 30 years, noticed my new living situation during their evening walks. Dorothy spotted me reading by flashlight one night when the power went out briefly. Margaret, this isn't right, she said the next day, bringing me a homemade casserole. You can't live in a garage. Come stay with us. We have the guest room ready. I thanked her but declined. Despite everything, I couldn't bear to leave the property completely. The thought of not seeing my granddaughters daily was too painful. And foolishly, I still hoped Patricia's conscience would awaken, that she would remember the mother who had sacrificed so much for her success. Dorothy wasn't easily deterred. Frank would be heartbroken to see you treated this way, she said firmly. You know that, don't you? Her words stayed with me, echoing in my mind during the long, quiet hours. Frank had always been the family's moral compass, gently but firmly guiding our children toward kindness and integrity. What would he think of Patricia's actions? Of my passive acceptance? As Thanksgiving approached, I watched through the garage windows as Patricia directed caterers setting up for their holiday party. I wasn't invited to join the celebration but was asked to make yourself scarce when their guests arrived. The final indignity came when Thomas suggested I eat my Thanksgiving meal in the garage to avoid questions from their friends about my living arrangements. That night, alone with my small plate of turkey and store-bought pie, I reached a breaking point. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and my breath formed visible clouds in the unheated space. My fingers were too numb to turn the pages of my book. Outside, I could hear laughter and music from the house that was once my home. I reached into my suitcase and pulled out the envelope I had carried with me since Frank's death 3 years ago, his final letter that I had been too heartbroken to open. Now, in my darkest moment, I needed his wisdom more than ever. With trembling hands, I broke the seal. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, Frank's familiar handwriting spelling my name across the front. For 3 years, I couldn't bring myself to read his final words. It felt too permanent, too final. But now, sitting on that cold cot surrounded by garden tools and holiday decorations, I needed his voice more than ever. Rain pattered against the garage roof as I carefully opened the envelope, preserving its edges as if it were a sacred artifact. Inside was several pages of Frank's distinctive handwriting, neat, but slightly slanted, written with the fountain pen I had given him on our 30th anniversary. My dearest Margaret, it began, and I could almost hear his deep voice reading the words. If you're reading this, I've been gone for some time. I hope you've found ways to smile again, to enjoy our garden and those mystery novels you love. I hope our children have surrounded you with love and support during your grief. But knowing you, my practical Maggie, you've probably been more concerned with taking care of them than allowing them to take care of you. First and most importantly, I need you to know that you were the greatest blessing of my life. Every morning for 45 years, I woke up grateful that you chose me. Remember our first apartment with the leaking ceiling and the neighbor who played saxophone at midnight? Even then, with nothing to our names but dreams, I was the richest man alive because I had you. I've thought carefully about what to share in this letter. There are practical matters to address, but I want to begin with the truth that has guided my life. Loving you and our children has been my greatest accomplishment. Not the business, not the house, not the investments, just the love we built together. Tears blurred my vision as I turned to the second page, Frank's words offering comfort across the chasm of death. Now to practical matters. Margaret, I need to confess something. I've kept a secret from you not out of deception, but out of love and caution. When I sold my share of the business before retirement, I didn't invest all the proceeds as you believed. I established a private trust fund in your name, managed by Charles Reynolds, with instructions that it should only be revealed to you when truly necessary. I've watched Patricia over the years with growing concern. She reminds me of my brother Edward, brilliant and driven, but with a troubling sense of entitlement. I've tried to guide her toward compassion, but I fear that once I'm gone, her ambition might override her better nature. Richard has always had a generous heart, but he sometimes lacks the strength to stand against his sister's forceful personality. The trust fund contains approximately $2.4 million. By the time you read this, with proper investment, it should have grown significantly. This money is yours alone, not part of any inheritance for the children. It's your safety net, your freedom, should you ever need it. I gasped, my hand covering my mouth. Frank had never mentioned this money. We had always made financial decisions together. Why would he hide something so significant? The letter continued. Additionally, there is a Swiss bank account in your name with detailed instructions in the sealed envelope Charles holds for you. The account contains the proceeds from the sale of my original company shares before we went public, approximately $1.8 million that has been quietly growing for over a decade. Now about the house. I know how much you love our home, every corner filled with memories. But I worried that after my death, you might make decisions out of grief or generosity that wouldn't serve you well. That's why I included a special clause in our property arrangement. While you may transfer ownership to our children, there is a reverter provision that Charles helped establish. If your reasonable comfort and dignified accommodation within the home are not maintained, ownership reverts to you entirely. Margaret, my love, I know you see only the best in our children. It's one of the countless reasons I adore you. But I've watched Patricia's materialism grow over the years, how possessions and status increasingly drive her choices. I've tried to course correct, to remind her of what truly matters, but I worry it wasn't enough. If you're reading this letter because all is well, then my concerns were unfounded, and you can continue as you wish. But if you're reading this because you've been hurt or taken advantage of, especially by those who should cherish you most, then this is my final gift to you. The means to stand on your own terms and the legal protection to reclaim what is rightfully yours. The final page of the letter shifted from practical matters back to the personal. Whatever happens, remember who you are. Margaret Wilson, the woman who worked nights to put me through business school, who raised our children with boundless love, who created a home so warm that everyone who entered felt its embrace. You are stronger than you know, wiser than you give yourself credit for, and deserving of respect and dignity always. I wish I could see the years ahead of you. I hope they bring you joy, adventure, perhaps even new love, though the thought makes me a bit jealous. Most of all, I hope you'll live authentically and boldly. Don't diminish yourself to make others comfortable. Don't sacrifice your happiness for those who won't appreciate the gift. I love you eternally, my Maggie. In whatever form consciousness continues after this life, know that my soul reaches for yours across that divide. Until we meet again, all my love, all my heart, all my gratitude for the life we shared. Forever yours, Frank. I clutched the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. In death as in life, Frank had tried to protect me, to ensure my well-being even when he couldn't be present. He had seen what I refused to acknowledge about Patricia, the materialism and entitlement I had excused as ambition. That night, as rain hammered against the garage roof and cold seeped through my blankets, something shifted inside me. The grief and betrayal remained, but alongside them grew a new emotion: resolve. Frank had provided not just financial security but permission to stand up for myself, to reclaim my dignity. I carefully folded the letter and placed it back in its envelope, but this time I didn't hide it away. Tomorrow I decided I would call Charles. Tomorrow I would reclaim my place in the world, not as a convenient grandmother to be tucked away in a garage, but as Margaret Wilson, a woman deserving of respect and proper treatment, especially from those to whom she had given everything. As I finally drifted to sleep, I felt Frank's presence more strongly than I had since his death. "Thank you," I whispered into the darkness. "I hear you now." I barely slept that night, my mind racing with revelations from Frank's letter. By dawn, I had formulated a plan. I waited until 8:30 a.m., when I knew the family would be having breakfast before school and work. I changed into my best sweater and slacks, clothes I hadn't worn since being relegated to the garage, and walked purposefully into the house through the kitchen door. Patricia, Thomas, and the girls were gathered around the island counter, eating Belgian waffles that Patricia only made for special occasions. They all looked up in surprise when I entered, as though a stranger had walked in. "Grandma," Jennifer exclaimed happily, "are you having breakfast with us?" Before Patricia could interject, I placed Frank's letter on the table. "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about living arrangements," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Patricia, Thomas, I'd like you both to read this." Patricia's expression shifted from annoyance to curiosity. She picked up the letter, her eyes widening as she recognized her father's handwriting. "What is this?" "Your father's final letter to me. I opened it last night." Thomas leaned over Patricia's shoulder as she began to read. I took a seat at the table, helping myself to a waffle and pouring a cup of coffee. The simple act of serving myself in what was once my kitchen felt like reclaiming a small piece of dignity. I watched as Patricia's face transformed from irritation to surprise, then disbelief and finally alarm. Her complexion paled when she reached the part about the trust fund and Swiss account. By the time she read about the reverter clause on the house, her hands were trembling. "This can't be legal," Thomas muttered, his face ashen. "The house is in our name now." "Actually," I said calmly, buttering my waffle, "if you read carefully, your father included a provision specifically protecting my right to comfortable accommodation. Charles Reynolds can confirm all the details." As if on cue, I removed my cell phone and dialed Charles's number, putting it on speaker. When his secretary answered, I asked to speak with him urgently regarding the Frank Wilson trust and reverter provision. Charles came on the line moments later. "Margaret, I've been wondering when you might call about this. Is everything all right?" "I've just shared Frank's letter with Patricia and Thomas," I explained. "I wanted to confirm that the trust fund, Swiss account, and reverter provision on the house are all legally binding." Charles's voice was clear and professional. "Absolutely. The trust currently holds approximately $3.2 million with accumulated interest. The Swiss account is similarly robust. And yes, the reverter provision is ironclad. If you've been denied reasonable accommodation in the home, ownership reverts to you immediately." Patricia's face crumpled. She pushed the letter away and buried her face in her hands. "Mom, you don't understand. We've been under so much financial pressure. Thomas's company has been downsizing. The girls' private school tuition keeps increasing. We needed the house. So you decided your mother should sleep in a leaking garage?" Charles asked sharply through the speaker. "Margaret, why didn't you call me sooner?" "I believed things would improve," I said simply. "I didn't want to create family conflict." Thomas attempted damage control. "Margaret, there's been a misunderstanding. We always planned to improve the garage space for you. Make it into a proper mother-in-law suite. With no bathroom, no heat, no invitation to family meals." My voice remained calm, but I felt a lifetime of deferred strength flowing through me. "The garage floods when it rains. I've developed a chronic cough from the dampness. You told Jennifer I prefer living there, when you know that's not true." Patricia wiped her tears, her expression shifting to calculation. "Mom, we can fix this. You can move back into the main house today. We'll give you the master bedroom. Whatever you want." I looked at my daughter, truly looked at her perhaps for the first time. The entitled child Frank had worried about had become an entitled adult, someone who valued possessions over people, even her own mother. "This isn't about the bedroom, Patricia. It's about respect and gratitude. I gave you everything without asking for anything except basic decency in return." The girls were watching silently, confused by the adult tension, but understanding something significant was happening. Ashley, the younger one, slipped from her chair and came to stand beside me, her small hand finding mine under the table. "What happens now?" Thomas demanded, his tone betraying fear rather than concern. "I'm leaving," I said simply. Patricia's eyes widened in panic. "Leaving? You can't. If Charles enforces that reverter clause, we'll lose everything." "You won't lose everything," I corrected her. You'll lose a house you clearly value more than family, but you'll still have your jobs, your possessions, and most importantly, the chance to teach your daughters better values than you've demonstrated. I stood up, still holding Ashley's hand. I'm going to stay with Aunt Barbara for a while. When I return, it will be to my own home, either this one, if the ownership reverts to me, or a new place I purchase for myself. Mom, please, Patricia begged, real desperation in her voice now. We can work this out. I was stressed and thoughtless, but I never meant to hurt you. You can't just leave us. I'm not leaving forever, I assured her, bending down to hug both granddaughters. I'll always be your grandmother, I whispered to them. This is adult business that has nothing to do with how much I love you. To Patricia and Thomas I added, I need time away to decide what happens next. Charles will be in touch regarding the legal aspects. As I walked toward the door, Patricia followed me, clutching Frank's letter. Dad always knew, didn't he? He saw something in me that even you didn't want to acknowledge. For the first time that morning, my composure wavered. Your father loved you completely, Patricia. He also knew everyone's weaknesses, including his own. He worried that without his guidance, certain tendencies might overshadow your better nature. And they did, she admitted quietly, tears flowing freely now. I became exactly what he feared. I touched her cheek gently. It's never too late to change, to become the person your father always believed you could be. But that journey is yours to make, not mine to force. I left that morning with just a small suitcase, my important documents, and Frank's letter. Dorothy Wilson was waiting in her car at the end of the driveway. I had called her the night before to arrange a ride to Barbara's house. As we drove away, I glanced back at the house where I had lived most of my adult life. Patricia stood in the doorway watching me leave. For the first time in months, I felt neither anger nor sadness, just a profound sense of having honored Frank's final wishes by finally standing up for myself. 6 months passed like a gentle season of renewal. I initially stayed with my sister Barbara, whose spare bedroom felt luxurious after months in the garage. She welcomed me with open arms and no judgment, though her eyes flashed with anger when she saw my persistent cough and how my clothes hung loosely on my frame. You should have called me sooner, she scolded gently, preparing homemade soup that first evening. Frank would be turning in his grave. Frank actually prepared for this possibility, I replied, showing her the letter. Her expression as she read it shifted from surprise to admiration. That man, she said finally, wiping away tears. Even from beyond, he's taking care of you. Charles Reynolds handled everything with professional efficiency. The reverter clause was indeed ironclad. The house legally returned to my ownership within weeks. Patricia and Thomas were given 60 days to vacate, though I extended this to 90 days when Patricia called, her voice humbled, to ask for more time to find suitable housing. During those first months at Barbara's, I focused on healing physically and emotionally. I saw doctors for my respiratory issues, began physical therapy for my arthritis that had worsened in the damp garage, and most importantly, started sessions with a therapist specializing in family trauma and elder abuse. What you experienced has a name, Dr. Laurel explained during our first session. Elder financial exploitation and emotional abuse, often perpetrated by family members. You're not alone in this experience. Her words validated the pain I had minimized for so long. Weekly therapy sessions helped me understand that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, and that Patricia's treatment of me reflected her issues, not my worth as a mother. Richard called daily after learning the full story from Charles. Mom, I had no idea, he said, his voice breaking. I should have checked on you more, should have insisted you stay with us despite the space issues. We all made mistakes, I assured him. What matters is where we go from here. With Charles's guidance, I restructured my finances. The trust fund Frank established provided more than enough for me to purchase a comfortable 2-bedroom condominium near Richard and Laura's home. It was single-level with wide doorways and grab bars in the bathrooms, practical for aging in place, but still stylish and bright. Moving day came in early spring. Richard and Laura helped arrange furniture and hang pictures. Their son Brandon, now 5, proudly carried small items into Grandma's new castle. Laura, with their infant daughter Lily in a carrier, organized my kitchen exactly as I liked it. Is this really mine? I asked Charles as he handed me the keys and condominium deed, My name alone on the ownership papers. All yours, he confirmed. Frank would be pleased to see you settled so well. Patricia and I maintained minimal contact during those early months. She sent a housewarming card with a stilted apology, which felt more obligatory than heartfelt. The girls called occasionally, supervised by Thomas, their conversations carefully guided away from any mention of the garage or their parents' behavior. 3 months after moving into my new home, I invited Patricia to meet for coffee at a neutral location, a small cafe halfway between our homes. She arrived early, already seated when I walked in, her usual confident posture replaced by something more hesitant. "You look well, Mom," she said, studying my face. "Healthy?" "I am well," I confirmed. Being treated with dignity does wonders for one's health. We exchanged careful pleasantries about the girls, the weather, Richard's expanding business. Finally, Patricia set down her cup with deliberate precision. "I've been seeing someone," she said. "A therapist." This surprised me. Patricia had always dismissed therapy as excuses for weak people. "Thomas and I both are," she continued. "Separately and together. It was his idea, actually. After we moved out of the house, he said he didn't recognize the people we'd become, and didn't like what our daughters were learning from us." "That's commendable," I offered cautiously. "I've been trying to understand why I treated you that way." Her voice wavered. "The therapist thinks I've spent my life trying to prove my worth through achievements and possessions. The house became a symbol of finally having arrived, and anything threatening that even my own mother became the enemy." She looked directly at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "It's not an excuse. Nothing excuses what I did to you. I just want you to know I'm trying to understand so I never become that person again." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was genuine, perhaps the first truly authentic interaction we'd had in years. "I sold most of our furniture," she added. "The expensive stuff we bought after taking over the house felt contaminated somehow. We're living more simply now. The girls share a room in the apartment, and they're actually happier." We began rebuilding slowly after that. Weekly coffee meetings expanded to occasional family dinners. Patricia and Thomas attended parenting classes focused on values and emotional intelligence. The change in their daughters was remarkable, less entitled, more compassionate. Richard and Laura welcomed me into their daily lives without reservation. I helped with the children 3 days a week, giving Laura time for her part-time nursing job. Brandon called me his brave grandma, after overhearing discussions about my time in the garage, a title I wore with unexpected pride. Using a portion of the trust fund, I established the Frank Wilson Scholarship for first-generation college students, the kind of opportunity that had changed Frank's life decades ago. Watching Patricia's face during the small ceremony unveiling the scholarship, I saw a glimmer of understanding about what truly constituted a legacy. The family home was eventually sold, with the proceeds divided equally between Patricia and Richard to help them secure appropriate housing. The antiques and heirlooms I had distributed were offered back to me, but I kept only those with the deepest personal meaning: Frank's desk, our wedding album, the grandfather clock he had restored when we were newlyweds. Last month, on the 4th anniversary of Frank's death, we gathered at my condominium for dinner. Patricia and Thomas arrived with homemade dishes and genuine smiles. Richard and Laura brought the children and a photo album they had created of Frank's life. Even Barbara joined us, her initial frostiness toward Patricia thawing slightly in recognition of genuine change. As we shared memories of Frank, Patricia suddenly said, "Dad knew I might fail this test of character. That's why he made those arrangements in his letter." "He didn't expect you to fail," I corrected gently. "He hoped you wouldn't need the lesson but prepared in case you did. That's what parents do, hope for the best, while preparing for human frailty." Looking around at my family, imperfect, healing, trying, I felt Frank's presence more strongly than I had since opening his letter. Not in grief but in gratitude for his foresight and the opportunity it had created for genuine transformation. Later, as everyone prepared to leave, Jennifer hugged me tightly. "I'm glad you don't live in the garage anymore, Grandma." "Me too, sweetheart," I replied, smoothing her hair. "Mom said you were brave to stand up for yourself," she whispered. "She said sometimes the people who love us make big mistakes, and we have to forgive them but not let them keep making those mistakes." Patricia overheard and blushed deeply. Our eyes met across the room, acknowledgement of how far we'd come, and how far we still had to go. That night, alone in my comfortable bedroom with moonlight streaming through curtains I had chosen myself, I took out Frank's letter again. The paper was becoming fragile from repeated readings, but his words remained powerful. "Remember who you are, Margaret Wilson," I read aloud, my finger tracing his handwriting. "You are stronger than you know." He was right, as he so often was. The garage had been my lowest point, but also the catalyst for reclaiming myself. Not just financially, but as a woman deserving of respect, capable of setting boundaries, even with those I loved most. What have you learned about family relationships from this story? Have you ever had to stand up to loved ones who weren't treating you right? What would you have done in my situation? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to demand the respect you deserve both from others and from yourself. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may your own families be built on foundations of genuine love and respect.